excuse me.
Excuse me, Congressman. I'm Mrs. Kozlowski.
Hi, I'm leaving.
We were just learning how a bill becomes a law. Was that a vote?
Yes, that was a vote in there. Yes, that was a vote. A vote was made. Bye-bye.
And what did you vote?
I voted nay, because it was a terrible bill, and it would have destroyed the fabric of American life.
What was the vote on?
Rafe, will you come here and talk to these nice people, explain to them about the vote?
Well, it was a motion on the previous question on the rule.
No, it was a motion on the recommitment of the rule, of the motion of the previous question.
Which means...
Clean air.
School lunches.
You see the difficult choices we have to make here, kids, between clean air and school lunches, okay? That's why I want to be the education congressman, because I feel that American students should be able to eat lunch and breathe at the same time. And I see in America where there's no such thing as a student who is below average. And I think it is wrong when students have to stay up late at night and miss all the good shows, doing homework, then get up early in the morning and go to school. This sort of thing just is not fair.
All right, so you seen how he went and voted on that bill, and he had absolutely no idea what it was. And then when him and the other congressman got around the children, and they trying to explain, and they just made up something, made off just off top of their head, right? And you see how he eventually got the children to cheer for him, and etc. And if you notice, that teacher kind of looked at him kind of like, yeah, you know what I'm saying? But she kind of peeped it. Now, what he did was what's called a DC dip and twirl. I got that from this movie Campaign, and I'm gonna let them show you an example of the same thing. And this movie Campaign is about the same thing that Distinguished Gentleman is about. It's about exposing corruption in DC and in politics. All right. So watch how they explain what I mean when I say dip and twirl. Right, Pete.
Our first question will go to the incumbent. How would you bring jobs back to the 14th district?
That's a great question, Carl. Thank you for asking it. It's the first thing I think of when I wake up in the morning, and it's the last thing I think of when I go to bed. Jobs in North Carolina mean what? A strong North Carolina, and a strong North Carolina means a strong America, and that, my friends, is how we're going to do it.
How we do, baby? How we do? You got my little kid?
Mr. Huggins, you have 1 minute for rebuttal.
Just like we rehearsed.
Cam Brady just gave you the old DC dip and twirl. Just danced around the question. Well, I'm here to tell you, North Carolina, that when it comes to jobs for my district, Martin Huggins doesn't dance. He rolls up his sleeves, puts his sandwich in his lunch pail, and brings jobs to the Tar Heel State. Yeah!
What the hell?
Yeah! Let's bring back corporations to North Carolina. Let's clean up DC and bring your brooms because it's a mess.
All right, which brings us to this. As you can see, remember. Now, this particular part, she's asking Biden about China, right? And Biden is responding with the typical politician shit. And I'm going to show you, all right?
Vice President Biden, your response, please.
My response is, look, this isn't about, there's a reason why he's bringing up all this malarkey. There's a reason for it. He doesn't want to talk about the substantive issues. It's not about his family and my family. It's about your family. And your family's hurting badly. If you're making less than, if you're a middle-class family, you're getting hurt badly right now. You're sitting at the kitchen table this morning deciding, well, we can't get new tires, they're bald because we have to wait another month or so. Or are we going to be able to pay the mortgage? Or who's going to tell her she can't go back to community college? They're the decisions you're making in the middle-class families like I grew up in Scranton and Claymont. They're in trouble. We should be talking about your families, but that's the last thing he wants to talk about.
I want to
The old DC dip and twirl. Just danced around the question.
talk about North Korea.
Excuse me, just
I do
for
want
one
to turn
second,
to
please.
10 seconds, Mr. President.
That's
10
a
seconds.
typical political statement. Let's get off this China thing, and then he looks, the family, around the table, everything. Just a typical politician when I see that.
Let's talk about
I'm
North
not a typical
Korea now.
politician.
Okay,
That's why I
President
got elected.
Let's talk
let's
about-
get off the subject of China. Let's talk around, sitting around the table.
All right.
Come on, Joe, you can do better.
We're going to talk about...
The old DC dip and twirl. Just danced around the question.
All right, so you seen the dip and twirl, right? Now, why did he hit the old dip and twirl on that particular question about the family? Because previously, Trump had brought up the Hunter Biden emails. Okay, so let's see how that exchange went.
Let alone became president. Big difference. He is the vice president of the United States, and his son, his brother, and his other brother are getting rich. They're like a vacuum cleaner. They're sucking
Okay,
up money every
President Trump,
place he
thank you.
goes.
We do
Not
need to
true.
move on. I do want to ask very quickly, and then
His
we're
son
going to move
walked
on
out
to
with
North
$1.5 billion
Korea.
from China to
Not
manage after
true.
spending 10 minutes in office and being in Air Force Two. Number one. Number two, there's a very strong email talking about your family wanting to make $10 million a year for introductions.
President Trump, on China policy, though.
All right, so you see, that's when Trump was bringing up the Hunter Biden emails. I don't know if you are familiar, but if you aren't, you need to go look them up. I'm not going to do that in this video because that'll be a whole another 20-30 minutes of speaking. But it essentially shows the corruptness of Joe Biden and his family. Now, let's go back to distinguished gentlemen so we can show you how they run their little scams.
I'd like to do more money for you, but first I've got to get your positions on a few issues. Now, where are you on sugar price supports?
Sugar price supports. Where should I be, Terry?
Shit, it makes no difference to me. If you're for 'em, I got money for you from my sugar producers in Louisiana and Hawaii. If you're against them, I got money for you from the candy manufacturers.
You pick.
Let's say 4.
Yeah, 4.
How about putting limits on malpractice awards?
Or you tell me.
Well, if you're for 'em, I got money from the doctors and insurance companies. If you're against them, I got money from the trial lawyers. Let's put you down as against.
Yeah, you know what? Put me down for against.
How about pizza?
Oh, no, this salad's going to be enough for me.
Not for lunch, old buddy. For pack money.
You thought I was serious? I was fucking with you.
Well, you are.
Fucking with you. I'll buzz. Terry, tell me something. With all this money coming in from both sides, how could anything possibly ever get done?
It doesn't. That's the genius of the system.
Hey, baby, put down nuclear power for 10 Gs. Mambo.
Cool. Yeah, well, you know the congressman's going to be out your way next week.
Mr. Woolley, Congressman Johnson calling. Can you take his call? Thank you. Please hold.
Yes, Mr. Brown. On the 30th.
We were wondering whether you aerospace people might want to lay on a luncheon so that you can hear his views.
I'm sorry, Mr. Woolley. He just picked up another call. Listen, I know why he was calling you. He hasn't heard from you about his fundraiser.
$1,000 a head. A whole table.
Lovely. Yeah. Well, now, what kind of a contribution to his foundation were you folks thinking about?
All right, so you see, that's a politician. You see how he got the hustle? He got his crew. They calling people. They extorting people for bribes. And just keep throwing on fundraisers. And it's legal extortion, legal bribery. And now you see how they say the 1% rule the world. The 1% control the money, and they use the money to control the legislation via the legislators. Okay, so this is what essentially the Jeffrey Epstein thing is about getting things on people, which you can blackmail them with. You know, it's not just evil, satanic, children I mean, it's an aspect. I mean, because of it's going on, that has to be what it is. I mean, what explanation do you have for doing horrible things like that other than you just an evil motherfucker? I don't care about none of the metaphysics and none of that. You can't convince me of no shit like that. Fuck you and your science. Excuse me, I'm digressing. But the point is, in a more of a general corruption sense, you know, strictly it can be it's a very strong tool for blackmail. Once you have people doing stuff like that on fucking camera, you know, you can control them to do whatever you want for you. And then they get these politicians to sign whatever legislation they want to go. The movie show you. All right, the movie campaign go even deeper, and I wanted to show you that, but I'm gonna keep it right here for now. We may go more. So lastly, I'm gonna end it with Trump basically exposing Biden as a career politician, 47 years, and you know has essentially done nothing but harm, especially to my people, so-called black people, morals of America.
President Trump, same question to you, and let me remind you of the question. I would like you to speak directly to these families. Do you understand why these parents fear for their children?
Yes, I do. And again, he's been in government 47 years. He never did a thing except in 1994 when he did such harm to the black community. And they were called, and he called them super predators. And he said that. He said it, super predators.
Will become the predators 15 years from now. And Madam President, we have predators on our streets that society has, in fact, in part because of its neglect, created.
And they have never lived that down. 1994, your crime bill, the super predators.
My response to that is I never, ever said what he accused me of saying.
Will become the predators 15 years from now. And Madam President, we have predators on our streets that society has, in fact, in part because of its neglect, created.
My response to that is I never, ever said what he accused me of saying.
Will become the predators 15 years from now. And Madam President, we have predators on our streets.
My response to that is I never, ever said what he accused me of saying.
That was a political promise. You know better to believe that.
No one should be going to jail because they have a drug problem. They should be going to rehabilitation, not to jail. We should fundamentally change the system, and that's what I'm going to do.
And that, my friends, is how we're going to do it.
But why didn't he do it 4 years ago? Why didn't you do that 4 years ago, even less than that? Why didn't you do it? You were vice president. You keep talking about all these things you're going to do, and you're going to do this. But you were there just a short time ago, and you guys did nothing.
We did.
You know, Joe, I ran because of you. I ran because of Barack Obama, because you did a poor job. If I thought you did a good job, I would have never run. I would have never run. I ran because of you. I'm looking at you now. You're a politician. I ran because of you.
All right, Vice President Biden,
Pipe,
respond.
shoot my sister, beat up my wife, take on my sons. So I don't want to ask what made them do this. They must be taken off the street. Increase the penalties. Increase them.
I would put the son of a gun in jail.
Put them to death.
From the crack epidemic of the 80s to the crime wave of the 90s to the post-9/11 war on terror, throughout his career, Biden has represented the Democratic Party consensus, shifting his views to fit whatever best serves his own political career. Over his 44 years in the Senate and then as vice president, Biden was a leading architect of today's criminal justice system, which contributed to mass incarceration and the police misconduct that protesters are fighting back against today.
Biden crime bill, the Biden crime bill.
The Biden crime bill.
Hell, we've had crime bills coming out our ears. Every major crime bill since 1976, every minor crime bill has had the name of the Democratic senator from the state of Delaware, Joe Biden. You got a gun, you commit a felony, 10 years. We already have it 5 years. Minimum mandatory. Judge can't say, you know, you had it in your pocket, you never intended to use it, we're only going to give you 1 year. Judge has to say 5 years. Well, he wants to make it 10 or 20 or 60. We can work that out.
He wanted to remove judicial discretion for those who, quote, don't meet the middle-class criteria of susceptibility to rehabilitation.
They are beyond the pale, many of those people. They literally have not been socialized. They are in jail. Away from my mother, your husband, our families.
The Biden-Thurmond Violent Crime Control Act of 1991 would have increased the maximum sentence for 44 crimes to include the death penalty.
A wag in the newspaper recently wrote, Biden has made it a death penalty offense for everything but jaywalking. I'm going to make it for 46 crimes. Biden says make it for 51. We're going to get tough.
Then he presented the final version of the legislation.
60 new death penalties, brand new, 60. There are 70 additional enhancements of penalties, i.e., you go to jail longer.
After his disastrous 1987 presidential campaign, Biden had staged his political comeback, in part by becoming a media darling on issues of policing and crime, and he led the fight to pass the landmark 1994 crime bill under Bill Clinton.
When I wrote the original bill that started this whole process, the so-called Biden crime bill, I didn't call a liberal confab and write it. I didn't call any big society people and write it. I called the cops.
A Democratic president wants 100,000 cops. A Democratic president wants to build 125,000 new prison cells.
That's the secret. That somehow the Republicans tried to make the crime bill tougher. I say poppycock. They didn't make anything tougher. Found out that this midnight basketball isn't getting them together, a bunch of jive folks living in their city to do, try to see if they can be Michael Jordan. When they found out, they were keeping schools open. So gangs come off streets instead of out raping my mother, marauding me, robbing the local store. They're in a gymnasium. And my daughter will be safer. My wife will be safer. My mother will be safer. And I will be safer. And I will be happy.
Never again should Washington put politics and party above law and order.
Along with several laws passed in the 80s, the 1994 crime bill drove up the local, state, and federal prison populations, and it tarnished the reputations of Biden and Bill Clinton, who signed it into law.
Hey, Clinton, you didn't want to take pictures of my people here. We're still in jail for what you did.
When Biden ran for president in 2008, he told the New York Times that he knew more people would be locked up across the board.
You ashamed of that bill?
Not at all. In fact, I drafted the bill. We had enormous success.
You have done nothing other than the crime bill, which put
Oh, God.
tens of thousands of black men, mostly, in jail.
All right, let me
And you know
let me
what?
a- let me
They
ask
remember
Vice
it
President
because if you
Biden.
look at
The mass incarceration created by Biden's lock-em-up policies ripped apart vulnerable communities and families for a generation, and the federal funding streams and law enforcement infrastructure it created continue to hinder reform efforts.
I'll do my job and I will take responsibility.
You ashamed of that bill?
Not at all.
Your response to that, and then I do have some questions for both of you.
Well, I tell you what, I hope he does look at me, because what's happening here is, you know who I am, you know who he is. You know his character, you know my character. You know our reputations for honor and telling the truth. I am anxious to have this race. I am anxious to see this take place. The character of the country is on the ballot. Our character is on the ballot. Look at us closely.
Let me ask some follow-up.
Excuse me.
Please respond, and then we're going to have
If this
follow-up
stuff is true
questions.
about Russia, Ukraine, China, other countries, Iraq, if this is true, then he's a corrupt politician.
All right.
So don't give me the stuff about how you're this innocent baby. Joe, they're calling you a corrupt politician.
Nobody-
Take a look
President
at the
Trump, I
laptop
want to
from
stay
hell.
on the issue
Excuse
of
me,
race. We're
take a
talking
look
about
at
the issue.
laptop from hell.
President Trump, we're
Nobody.
talking about race right now, and I do want to stay on the issue of race. Let me give you a chance to respond within this context. Crime bills that you supported in the 80s and 90s contributed to the incarceration of tens of thousands of young black men who had small amounts of drugs in their possession. They are sons, they are brothers, they're fathers, they're uncles, whose families are still to this day, some of them suffering the consequences. So speak to those families. Why should they vote for you?
One of the things is that in the 80s, we passed 100%, all 100 senators voted for it, a bill on drugs and how to deal with drugs. It was a mistake. I've been trying to change the since then, particularly the portion on cocaine. That's why I've been arguing that, in fact, we should not send anyone to jail for a pure drug offense. They should be going into treatment across the board. That's what we should be spending money on. That's why I set up drug courts, which were never funded by our Republican friends. They should not be going to jail for a drug or an alcohol problem. They should be going into treatment. Treatment. That's what we've been trying to do. That's what I'm going to get done, because I think maybe the American people have now seen that, in fact, it was a mistake to pass those laws relating to drug. But they were not in the crime bill.
But why didn't he get it done? See, it's all talk, no action with these politicians. Why didn't he get it done? That's what I'm going to do when I become president. You were vice president, along with Obama as your president, your leader, for 8 years. Why didn't you get it done? You had 8 years to get it done. Now you're saying you're going to get it done because you're all talk and no action, Jim.
Shut up, bitch!